Oops. Alright. Can you guys see my slide? Boleh. Okay, good. Alright, so let's continue with our class today on hearing physiology. So before that, once you wake up early in the morning, okay, you heard your alarm clock. So please don't get angry, but please be thankful to God because He still like giving you the sense of hearing for you so that you can wake up and do whatever needed and necessary. Okay. So bangun pagi dengar bunyi alarm clock jangan nak marah-marah pula. So cakap lah thank God. Okay, masih lagi alert. Alright. So let's move on. Okay, so on the learning outcome, it's very simple, simple class on hearing. Today we're only going to talk about your ears together with your brain, how your ears receive the sound wave and how that sound wave is going to be converted into the sound, the kind of sound. Sometimes you might say, oh, this sound is so loud, this sound is so soft. How your brain interpret the sound, whether the sound is with a high frequency or low frequency, or how do you interpret that the sounds that your friend are talking is A in alphabet or S in alphabet. So that is very unique mechanism, even though our ear is very small portions comparing to another organ systems in our body, but is capable to interpret what the sounds is and what are the other sounds. Okay, and then describe the consequences of the hearing abnormalities. Whatever is normal can go abnormal whenever there is trauma or whatever, or we do not take care of that organ. So it could be haywire lah. Alright. Okay. Now let's move on to the functional structures of the hearing mechanism of the ear system itself. So our ear has been divided into three parts. Alright. So we have the external, or you call it as the outer ear, the one that you can see visibly. Alright, like with your eyes. And then another portion is the middle ear. Alright, the maroon in color over here. And another one we have the inner ear. So the one with the outer ear and also the inner ear is actually filled in with the air, but the inner ear over here, the one that look like a snail, which we call it as a cochlea, is actually consists of water. So please appreciate what are in our environment. So you know that in our environment right now, we have the atmosphere which fill in with water, but we can still use our ear to hear what are in our airspace and whatever and so forth. But then to God also, animals in the water also can still hear things and can still talk, meaning that the sound itself can travel in the air and the sound itself can travel in the water. So combining the air environment together with the water, the sea system, so that has been compressed in our physiological system, by which God has made us ear that consists of air space and also the fluid filled space, which is known as the cochlea, the inner ear. Okay, alright. In the outer ear over here, you can see that we have the cuping telinga. We call it as the pinna. Even though it is like if we are an alien, we saw human will be a little bit funny because we have the earlobe. But actually the earlobe is very important because it's going to collect all the ear sounds. Alright. And then we have, instead of just collect, it also will conduct the sound wave to the middle ear. Alright. In this external ear, we have 1/3 of cartilage and 2/3 over here, starting from here, 2/3 into the middle ear, we have the bony structure. So inside our temporal lobe, inside our skull. Right, and then we have a sebaceous gland over here. The sebaceous gland is very important as a protective layer because we know that whatever is being exposed to the outside environment, it is capable to be dusty. Okay, dusty, and there are also microorganisms outside, so it can disturb our normal flora. So this sebaceous gland is actually to trap all of the external particles so that it can be removed out and do not disturb the physiological function. And then this external ear also is very important because it's not only collect the sound, but it also will increase the sound. So how much does the sound increase by our pinna? It's actually 15 decibel. So decibel is the sound the unit that we give to the sounds. That sound density we use decibel. So dB is decibel. So 15 decibel increase due to its shape itself. So sometimes you might say, can we are we able to like move our pinna to the left and to the right? Very rare you can find that people can like move their pinna, right? Macam cuping telinga boleh gerak-gerak tu kan. Even though they can move, it just only up and down. It's not moving like a cat. So you see a cat, when they stay silent, you can see that they can shake their pinna either to the front or to the left or to behind. That is very special for the cats because they're going to relocate where is the sound source, so they can like be aware lah, so like a protective mechanism also. So let's move into the middle ear. You can see at this the brown color over here in the middle. So this is actually called a middle ear with starting from this drum shaped structure, which is the tympanic membrane. In Malay we call it as the gegendang telinga. Okay, memang dia gegendang pun. Actually memang dia gegendang. It's actually function as a gendang, but this tympanic membrane, starting from here, is anchored with the bony structure, and this bony structure we call it as the ossicles. Alright, so these ossicles, these ossicles are actually consist of three bony structure. The first one known as the milius, a second one known as the incus, and the smallest one is called as the Steppis Bone. Steppis Bone. So all of these three collectively called as the ossicles. Okay, instead of just having this tympanic membrane, this bony structure, this middle ear is connecting to the inner ear by two windows. Okay, later I will show you how does the window look like. The first one is the oval window, which is very easy, oval in shape, and another one we have a round window down below here, which is round in shape. However, the window that being attached to the Steppis bone is known as the oval window. Okay, so we have three bony muscles and bony structure, and please bear in mind wherever we have the bone should be moving, right? Our skeletal structure in our system also is moving. So how does our bone be getting moved is by actually attaching to the muscles. So instead of just saying that our middle ear having the bony structure, having a bone, it also have a muscles. So we have three bone and also two muscles. Is it over here? Okay. So I will show you later on. The two muscles is actually attaching to the tympanic membrane, the bone that attached to the tympanic membrane, and another one that being attached to the Steppis bone. So muscles is to contract. So similar to the muscles in the middle ear, its function is to contract. Right? The muscles that being attached to this milius, to the tympanic membrane, is called as the tympanic muscles, and the one is called as the stapedius muscles. We will look at it later. Okay, so let's move on to the tympanic membrane first. So tympanic membrane is actually made up of collagen, right, and also there is elastic fiber. If you use the I don't remember what we call that equipment. It's like macam teropong macam tu, you can put inside your ear, and then you can see our tympanic membrane is actually look like this, right? With regards to the earwax that you have, for those who doesn't like clean up their ears, alright, it's okay. It's a protective mechanism, so you don't have to like remove it all of it. Okay, tinggal sikit lah untuk protective. Alright, so it's going to be look like this. It's translucent. Alright, you can see, if you take a look at it, you can see the white color over here is actually the bone. Okay, this is the milius bone. Alright, this one, the first bone that attached to the tympanic membrane. Okay, so for those who have an inflammation on the tympanic membrane, we call it as the tympanitis. So this is inflammation, tympani is the organ itself, so tympanitis. Alright, so the functions of this tympanic membrane is actually to provide the mechanical barrier. So from the external ear to the inner ear. Instead to function as the hearing organ inside our body, it's also as to form the mechanical barrier from foreign particles to get inside our middle ear. Okay, and then it will receive the ear sounds. That's why kita panggil dia gendang. The sounds that come to it will knock on this tympanic membrane and cause the tympanic membrane to vibrate. Right now, you are listening to my sound. The tympanic membrane is actually vibrating. So especially for those who are using the, what do we call, the earphone. Alright, so the sound source doesn't have masking. Apa pula masking? So later we're going to talk about masking. So for those who have used their earphone while hearing something, so your hearing mechanism can be focused to the particular sounds that you are going to listen to. So my sounds, my voice right now is actually knocking on the tympanic membrane and cause vibrations to the tympanic membrane. So this vibration is actually will be transferred to this bone, alright, to the milius, transferred to the incus, transferred to the stapes, and it will transfer to the inner ear. So what's in the inner ear, we're going to talk about it later. Okay, so we just get to know the structures of the middle ear first. So due to that, we call these middle structures of this tympanic membrane over here as the resonator. It will resonate the sounds that coming in. Okay, so in this bony structure, so this is a mist bone. Why mist? Milius, incus, and stapes. So actually, if you're going to know, our smallest bones in our body are at our hearing system, which is the Steppis bone. So Steppis bone is actually the smallest bone in our body. And together, the muscles that attach to the Steppis bone, which is known as the stapedius muscles, is actually the smallest muscle in our body. Very special. Okay, so foot plate of Steppis over here, by which it attached to the inner ear by the window, which is known as the oval window. If you can take a look at this, dia ada macam tapak kasut. Alright, Steppis ni ada eye here over here. You can see the blue colour here is actually the oval window that is in the cochlea. Alright, and another one we have a round window down below here. A bit down below here we have the oval window. And this stapes, they have a foot plate. We call it foot plate of Steppis. So this foot plate of Steppis is actually attached to the cochlea by the window known as the oval window. So when my voice, the sound wave of my voice come to your tympanic membrane, it cause vibrations of your tympanic membrane, and later this tympanic membrane vibration will be transmitted through this bone and later pass to the foot plate of Steppis. And what will foot plates of Steppis do? It will knock the window like dum 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 dum, knocking and giving the sound wave to transmit the sound wave to the inner ear. Okay, alright. So that's why we call it this bone as the ossicular chain. So remember, in the external ear we have the air space together with the middle ear, still the air space. But however it is, the internal ear over here, the inner ear over here, in the cochlea is the fluid field space. And the fluid inside the cochlea, there are two types. Okay, there are perilimbs and also endolimbs. Don't worry so much. We're going to get to know closer detail where is perilimb, where is endolimb. But you have to question to yourself why our sounds has been transferred in the airspace. To make it more specific, it's going to be transferred into the fluid field cavity. So meaning that comparing the water and also the atmosphere or the air environment, so the transmissions of the sound are actually better in the water comparing to the airspace. Kenapa macam tu? Okay, ingat balik chemistry, by which you learn that inside the water there are a lot of molecule inside it. Alright, sama lah macam contoh saya bagi awak a simulations by which you have a grenade and then you throw your grenade in the airspace and also you throw your grenade in the water. Which one will give the high impact? Awak rasa yang mana? Awak baling bom dekat udara dengan awak baling bom dekat dalam air, yang mana impact dia lagi kuat? Ataupun you have a barrel, you have a barrel by which only consists of air and another barrel which consists of water, and then you put one grenade inside the air barrels and the water barrels, and then you close it, and then you see which one will give a high impact. Actually, the one that will give a high impact is the one that contains water, because it consists of molecule. All right. And then talking about water, we had a lot of water. We have the sea water, we have a fresh water. But comparing these two pula, the salt water is actually having a high impact comparing to the fresh water, because the sea water, they have a sodium chloride much more compact and much consists of a lot of molecules inside it comparing to the fresh water. Okay. Kenapa saya cakap pasal bom-bom dekat dalam air, dekat dalam angin ni? It's very important because we are going to talk about ourselves. Comparing to the environment, this environment is actually replicating ourselves. Alright, now let's take a look at the pathology. So if the one that having the inflammations of the tympanic membrane, we call it tympanitis. But those who have the inflammations on the ossicles bone, we call it as the otosclerosis. Okay, so bonifications of the steppis and fail to vibrate. So if this organ fail to vibrate, so meaning that the transmission is failed, so no hearing. We might have a hearing loss. Okay, so normally our steppis is just this size. Okay, now let's take a look at the two ossicular muscles that attach. I said we have three bony structure and two muscles. Alright, these two muscles, the one that attached to the malleus, that wish to control the movement of the tympanic membrane over here, we call it tensor tympanic muscles. But the one that attached to the stapedius bone over here is called as the stapedius muscle. Why don't they call it as the malleus muscle comparing to this one, stapedius muscle? It's because this muscle is actually controlling the movement or the vibrations of the tympanic membrane. That's why they call it tensor tympanic. Okay, so tensor is tension. Okay, it's control the tension of the tympanic membrane. It's very easy. When you understand the name, you can understand its functions. Alright, so for those who have like a tensor tympani, okay, tensor tympani together with the stapedius muscle is actually muscles we know it can contract and it can relax. Alright, if let's say this tensor tympanic muscle and also the stapedius muscle is undergo contraction, so when it's contract, it can control the movement of this bone together with the tympanic membrane. So it can control the hearing system in our ear. Let's say you has been exposed to the louder or noise environment. So this tensor tympanic muscle will contract. So when it contract, it will reduce the vibration. So when it reduce the vibrations, it can give an adaptation to your ear so that you can adapt to the noisy environment. Kalau tak, manusia ni, bila kita campak dia kat tempat bising, dia tak boleh hidup because out of their normal. But our body system, it can adapt to the situation, and the adaptation is coming from these two muscles. That's why for those who have a paralysis of this muscle, okay, they might be very sensitive to the sound. So this we call it as the hyperacusis. Kita cakap bisik-bisik pun dia boleh dengar. So a tympanic reflex or acoustic reflex. That one, the one that I've been talking about just now, the contractions of this muscle, alright, is actually called as the tympanic reflex. So it's actually a reflex, a protective reflex that decrease the damage. Alright. So what's the contractions? So for example, like being exposed to the prolonged noise, so tensor tympani and stapedius muscle will contract and reduce the vibration. So I talked to you just now already about this. And together, for example, like when you are yawning, menguap, okay, dah menguap dah semua tadi, or you are chewing something, so actually our ear is producing a noise. Okay, our action, yawning and chewing, actually producing a lot of noise. But how our body system or our ear adapting or controlling the noise that coming in? Cuba awak menguap. Masa first awak menguap tu, awak akan dengar bunyi bising kan? Actually lepas tu awak tak akan dengar bunyi bising dah. So actually the tensor tympani is contracting. So it control the noise. Alright, now let's take a look at the middle ear. We have the eustachian tube. Ada banyak slide, but this one, yeah. So let's take a look at the eustachian tube. So the red color over here. So eustachian tube is actually a closed space, and this closed space is actually what we call to equalize the pressure inside the inner ear, the middle ear. Okay, for example, like when you ride an airplane, okay, you naik kapal terbang, and on top of the like let's say 200 feet from the sea level, you might heard what do we call a sound. Kita panggil sound tu, I don't know how to describe that sound. So you akan rasa bengang kan? Okay, so why is that happen is because the pressure of the eustachian tube is actually adapted to the pressure at the sea level. So meaning that down here, the pressure is high comparing to the atmosphere. But when you go to the 200 feet from the above the sea level, okay, so the pressure in the eustachian tube is higher comparing to the pressure of the outer ear. So it will push the what do we call the oval window out. Okay, so making the sound yang bengang tu. So how you going to cancel it? You drink water or you telan air liur, you swallow your saliva. So what will happen actually? When you drink and you swallow your saliva, so you will make a gap, you will open the air pressure of the eustachian tube, therefore it will equalize back with the outside environment. So this is just a summary. So the middle ear is to receive the sound, to transmit the sound, and then to amplify the sounds, by which it will increase the loudness of the sounds from the outside. So when it comes to the inside, it's actually louder. So what make it louder is because of the structure or the size of the tympanic membrane itself. Alright, so the tympanic membrane is 17 in size, in ratio comparing to the oval window, and also the ossicular change, the handle is 1.3 longer. So 17 times with 1.3, we got 22 times louder comparing to the original sounds. So we call it to amplify the sounds wave, and this is called as the impedance matchings. Alright, instead of that is to equalize the air pressure, alright, and also to protect to the adaptive mechanism, but we protect from the loud noise. Okay, so let's move on to the inner ear. Now we are going to talk about the one that fill in with the fluid, which is actually called as the labyrinth. Okay, in the labyrinth itself, the cochlea, the one that look like a snail, we have the please make yourself focus on my voice, because we have the one that making a mention behind my house. So please voice out if you cannot see you cannot hear my voice or see my voice. Alright, so let's take a look at the labyrinth over here, the inner ear. We have the bony labyrinth, and also we have the membranous labyrinth. So the cochlea is actually a bone. Okay, so inside this bone, the purple in color over here, it's not purple in color, just in the diagram it shows it's purple in color over here is actually the bony labyrinth. Okay, bony cochlea, but we don't call it bony cochlea, we call it bony labyrinth. So in this bony labyrinth is actually filled with the fluids that help to transmit or transfer the sound wave. Okay, so this fluid, since it is at the perimeter of the cochlea, we call it as the perilimb. Instead of having a bony labyrinth, we also have the membranous labyrinth. So meaning that this layer is made up of the membrane. That's why they call it as the membranous labyrinth. So inside this membranous labyrinth, there is a fluid also which is known as the endolimb. Because it is inside, we call it as the endolimb. So is there any difference, perilimb and endolimb? Of course, the first one is belong to its location itself, and the second one is the compositions of the fluid. So meaning that if there is a difference, so meaning that it has their own function. Okay, so both fluid having different properties. Alright, so what are the difference? Okay, look at this one. Okay, this is perilimb. Okay, the blue over here is blue in color. The here is purple in color is perilimb, and the one that is in orange in color over here is actually the endolimb. Okay. So moving to this one, by which you have a perilimb. So perilimb and endolimb in nature are actually the extracellular fluid. So but the location makes their name different, and the compositions of the fluid itself make their name different. The one that resides on top of the cochlea, we call it as the scala tympani. Perilimb in the scala tympani over here, this region, and down below here we call it as the scala tympani. So scala vestibuli and scala tympani consists of perilimb, but in the middle in the orange color regions over here is known as the scala media. The scala media consists of the endolimb, but the difference is that the endolimb is actually consists of rich in potassium and poor in sodium, but opposite to the scala vestibuli or scala tympani, by which consists of perilimb. So meaning that endolimb high in potassium poor in sodium, but in the perilim, poor in potassium and rich in sodium. So please recall back when we talk about sodium, when we talk about the potassium, what is the functions of these two ions? These two ions are actually very crucial during action potential. There you go. Right now in the cochlea, anything that come to it going to be transduced into the electrical current. So we talk about the action potential, we are talking about our nervous system. So nervous system dah nak start hantar all of this information is going to be sent to the brain so that the brain can perceive, oh, what kind of sounds is this? Oh, this is the sounds that this is the renovation sounds behind my house. Okay, that is for example. All right. So this is the cochlea structure. Oh, very nice. Okay, so now let's take a look at this cochlea. What else, instead of just having a fluid, what else that help to change all of this information from the vibrations of the sound to be transmitted from the mechanical forces, which is known as the wave or vibrations, to be transmitted into the electrical current? The fluid itself is not enough. There must be the nervous system. So nervous system we call that detect the stimulus is actually known as the receptor. So what is the receptor that reside in our ear? It is very special receptor. Okay. And where does the receptor located? So this receptor is actually located at the scala media. So this is scala media, this is scala tympani, perilim, this is scala vestibuli. Terbalik, scala vestibuli, perilim, scala tympani, perilim, and this scala media is consists of the scala media consists of endolimb. And in the endolimb, as I mentioned earlier, it consists or contain high in potassium ion. So potassium ion will cause changes in the membrane potential. Recall balik masa awak belajar action potential masa awak year 1 dulu. So potassium will cause membrane depolarization. That's what happened actually in the scala media. But the things inside the scala media that help to transmit this mechanical forces into electrical forces is known as this one. Dia ada house kat sini. So house for the receptor which is known as the organ of Corti. Nama dia organ of Corti. Corti tu sebenarnya cortex. Okay. So organ of Corti. So scala vestibuli I did mention to you. Alright. Oh yeah, before that. Okay, if you take a look at this snail-like structure, actually, if you spread it open, it will be very long. Not very long lah. It will be long comparing to the compressed or compact structure of the snail look like. Okay, if you spread it open, it will be like in one layer. Actually, scala vestibuli is actually on top of it. Macam awak spreadkan snail tu, dekat atas layer, bahagian atas dia is actually scala vestibuli, but scala vestibuli contain a perilim. This one also perilim. How does this perilim connect to this perilim? Actually, at the end, if you spread this open, the one at the pangkal, we call it as the base, and the last portion we call it as the apex. Okay, this is the base, right? This is the apex. Okay, both of it consists of perilim. Yang blue in color is endolimb. Okay. So this is scala vestibuli, and this perilim inside the scala vestibuli is actually connecting to the scala tympani. Behind it, scala tympani, okay, they are connecting with each other by one hole, by which that hole is known as the helicotrema. So this is like this. Kita tunjuk gambar dulu nanti awak nak faham macam mana. So this is the oval window by which the foot plate of Steppis is knocking on. Okay, bila ada sound dia knocking on dekat sini, ada fluid kan. So fluid will vibrate, alright. So it will pass, this is perilim, okay, it will pass to the helicotrema down below here also in the perilim, and then dia akan tolak round window ni. Round window is just a thin sheath of membrane that just freely move in and out depending on the oval window. When the oval window is pushed in, so this one will be bulged out. So sama macam you have a U tube, bukan U tube, a tube, okay, U tube with the open-ended, you put what do we call, a sheath of the elastic membrane both on top of the both of the end. Okay, satu end tu kalau you tekan, tolak dalam tu ada fluid. Okay, satu end tu kalau awak tekan, satu lagi akan naik atas. So dia macam bergilir-gilir lah. Alright, so meaning that this perilimb is connecting to the perilimb, but what makes their name different is because this is scala vestibuli because it's near to the vestibule. Vestibule tu apa pula? Esok kita belajar vestibule. Because it's near to the vestibule, and this one scala tympani because it's near to the tympanic membrane. So this is a scala tympani. That's only the difference. Okay, now in this so I done mention about the scala vestibuli. Now let's move into the scala tympani. I done mention about it. In the scala media, alright, in the scala media, in the middle of the scala media consists of endolimb with having a round window. Okay, separate it. Consists of rich in the potassium, and there has a house for the receptor for hearing, which is known as the organ of Corti. So this one is organ of Corti. So where does this organ of Corti reside? Lay on? It's lay on the one layer of membrane. This is membrane. This is membrane, and that membrane known as the basilar membrane. So why basilar membrane? Base. So base membrane. Alright. So before that, this organ of Corti actually having a receptor for the hearing mechanism, and this receptor known as the hair cell. So kenapa dia hair cell? Sebab dia bukan hair rambut, hair follicle tu. It's hair cell because that cell having a hair-like structure on top of it. Okay, kita tengok nanti. So in the inner ear, we have the organ of Corti located on the basilar membrane. Okay, with the hair cells, they have the nerve terminals. Okay, this is the nerve terminals. This is the supporting cells that support the hair cells. This is their hair. Okay, but their hair is called, we don't call it hair, but we call it as the stereocilia. It's a cilia-like structure. Why stereo? Stereo is sounds. The stereo. Stereo is a sound. Masa awak dengar lagu kan? So stereo is actually a sound. Cilia is actually the hair. We call it a cilia. Alright. And a part of these receptor cells, we also have one membrane which cover on top of the stereocilia, which is known as the tectoral membrane. Alright. We have the membrane down below here known as the basilar membrane, and on top of it here we have a tectoral membrane. So tectoral membrane is actually it's tapping on the hair cells. That's why we call it tectoral membrane. Okay, basilar membrane is actually pushing the hair cells on top. So dia macam burger lah. So dia akan knocking the stereocilia. Okay, the part that very sensitive right now in our hair cell receptor is actually stereocilia. Stereocilia going to detect whether there is a sound wave or no sound wave coming in. Alright, so its function is to convert the sound wave into the action potentials to the cochlear nerve. Alright, so in the hair cell itself, they have a category. We have the inner hair cells and the outer hair cells. So because it lay on the outer region, kalau awak tengok kat sini, alright, because it is in the inner part, we call it at the inner hair cells. As this is the outer part, we call it as the outer hair cells. So in details, inner hair cells, outer hair cells. But if you comparing like these two, you can see that actually we will have a large number of outer hair cells in comparing to the inner hair cells. Okay, so inner hair cell only 3,500 for examples. Alright, they extended in the entire length of the cochlea. If you spread the cochlea, so the entire length of the cochlea akan ada inner hair cells. Macam ni lah. Okay, this is a basilar membrane. Alright, yang pink ni is a basilar membrane. On top of the basilar membrane ni, dia ada satu row yang penuh dengan inner hair cells and outer hair cells. Sampai kat belakang. From the base down to the apex. Okay, so the outer hair cell is actually much greater, which is 20,000 number. So the function is the transducer, by which it transduces the mechanical forces into electrical forces. Alright, now let's move on to the hair cell itself. As I mentioned, we have the hair on top of the cells, but this hair, we call it as the stereocilia. Alright, so at the base of each hair cells, the base down below here, they have a nerve which is known as the nerve efferent fiber. Alright, so this stereocilia, they have the link on top of each stereocilia. So the arrangement is actually like this. Alright, dia ada satu, it's arranged in length. Okay, they have the shortest, mediums, and also the lowest, the tallest one. Okay, they must be arranged like this. Memang cantik lah. Alright, and then on top of each stereocilia, there are a link which is known as the tip links. look at the structure. The structure must tell its function. Okay, jangan tanya kenapa dia macam ni. It must have its own function. Okay, nanti kita tengok. So the tips link. Okay, so for example, we have the sound wave that coming into the water. Okay, on top of it is the perilim. Okay, when the footplate of Steppis knocking the oval window, so the water, the perilim will be transformed into the wave-like movement. Okay, because it's fluid. So bila ada sound wave vibration, dia akan jadi wave. So that wave that coming in will knock on the tectorial membrane. So when it knock on the tectorial membrane, this tectorial membrane will push this one like this. Nampak tak? Okay, so the wave-like structure will knock on it, alright, and then later go to the helicotrema and come back, knock the basilar membrane. So when the knocking action goes by, this stereocilia will bend. So like this lah. This stereocilia will actually standing straight, but when they have been knocked by the tectorial membrane, it will bend. So once it bend, it actually will open the channel, which is the potassium channel. So once the potassium channel, remember at the scala media, we have a lots of potassium. Okay, because scala media is the fluid, is the endolymph that consists high with the potassium. So this potassium will influx in. So when this potassium will influx inside, it will cause the changes in the membrane potential. So when the membrane potential undergo changes and become less negative, it's actually undergoing depolarization. Ingat balik zaman-zaman awak belajar action potentials tu. Okay, so right now action potential is already generated. Okay, so in the inner hair cells, going back to this, if we take a look at the nerve innervation, we will see that the inner hair cell, even though it is less in number comparing to the outer hair cells, the what do we call the innervations by the nerve are actually very rich comparing to the outer hair cells. So inner hair cells having 90 to 95% efferent nerve ending over here. Efferent nerve ending. But for the outer hair cells, it's only 5 to 10% only on the efferent nerve ending. And this nerve ending, when you compile all of it together, it will form the auditory division of the 8th cranial nerve, by which this nerve will send, the auditory nerve will send to the brain to be translated to translate the sounds. Alright, so this is what happened. Alright, so when there is remember back, recall back during the action potentials, when the potassium coming in, cause depolarizations. Okay, these depolarizations cause the opening of the calcium channel. Please recall back. Siapa yang tak ingat, baca balik action potentials. It will cause influx of calcium. Why influx of calcium is very important? It is very important because with the presence of calcium only, the vesicles that containing neurotransmitter can be passed to the end of the membrane. Barulah neurotransmitter tu akan release. If let's say you have not enough volume, not enough amount of calcium, so the neurotransmitter will not be released into the efferent fiber. Okay. So this is the auditory efferent pathway, with the hair cells on the right side, it's sent to the spinal ganglion, similar with the left side. Go to the vestibular cochlear 8 nerve. Okay, remember 8, not 7, 6, 5, 10. It is 8. And then it will go in the medulla. It will go to the cochlear nuclei. Okay, and then from the nuclear nuclei, it will across to the left and right, so that the brain will perceive the sounds. The brain will get only one input that the brain can digest, or what is the sounds. Okay, so the brain is only one, it can digest only one. So even though you have left and right side, but the auditory will collect the sounds from right and left, and then compile it together and then digest what is the sound, analyze what is the sound. So this we can see. Okay, so olivocochlear bundle descend down and innervate the outer group of outer hair cells. Olivocochlear bundle are actually cholinergic neuron. So when we talk about cholinergic neuron, it's containing acetylcholine. Now let's take a look at the mechanism of hearing. So how the mechanism is actually occur. So sound wave properties, before that you need to understand physics first. So physics of what? Physics of sound, physics of vibrations. Okay, physiology ni fizik lah, tapi dalam biological system. Okay, the sound wave, they are actually alternate compression, this is compression, and refraction. So this is the sound wave. Okay, so the sound wave are actually coming from the vibrating source. Anything like guitar, like even though you knock on the table, so actually when you knock the table, the sound is transmitted in the air as a wave. Okay, so in the air, it is 340 meter per second, alright, at the 20 degree environment. If it is in a hot environment, it is, and also in a high altitude, it is much greater, and it much greater in the seawater comparing to the fresh water. Okay, so what about the frequency? Frequency is how frequent the sounds is in one second. So the number of the wave that has been produced in second. So usually the frequency we say in units of hertz. So macam awak dengar radio kan, berapa hertz, 1.6, 106.5, 94.5 hertz, macam tu lah. Okay, so but our hearing system is actually sensitive around 20 to, but it actually can hear 20 to 20,000 hertz, but it's only sensitive to the sound frequency within 1000 to 4000 hertz. Nanti kita tengok lah 1000 to 4000 hertz ni bunyi yang macam mana. Okay, but the complex sound wave are actually consist of more than one frequency. Like right now I'm talking, my voice is actually producing a lot of sound frequency. So macam mana nak tahu sound frequency? Every alphabet that we learn, A, B, C, D, E tu, each alphabet having their own sound frequency. That's very special. Okay, but contoh when you heard to the music, or I place you in a hall, okay, macam awak pergi dengar band ke, bising kan band tu. Satu lagi saya campak awak pergi kat tempat yang ada kilang semua, saya tutup mata awak, but still even though with the closed eyes you can interpret whether this is a music or this is a noise. Why? Music is actually a rhythm, a frequent rhythm. Maksudnya kalau awak pernah main muzik lah kan, awak pernah band ke apa ke, kalau awak buka keyboard, awak akan tengok muzik dekat keyboard tu, even though awak plug a few key, dia akan produce sounds tu yang berkali-kali yang sama, like tum 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 tum, satu lagi tum 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 tum. So muzik tu dia ada rhythm. So the one that has a rhythm is categorized as a music. The one that doesn't have rhythm, maksudnya bunyi tu caca merba semua, itu kita panggil noise. Sebab tu bila orang tu pandai menyanyi, awak cakap dia adalah musician. Kalau orang tu tak pandai menyanyi, awak cakap memekik. Okay, so actually speech is much more complex than it sound. Why? Because I said in our text kita ada banyak lintang pukang A, B, C, D, E kita kan. Macam contoh awak tulis kan, setiap words tu ada macam-macam jenis and has its own characteristic. So that is a complex sounds. So what about pitch? Pitch is actually the sensation. So either we heard the sounds like high pitch or low pitch. Okay, so usually female will have the high pitch comparing to the male. That's why kalau pitch tu macam bunyi yang tajam, bunyi yang nyaring, female have a high pitch comparing to the male. That's why if females are like whispering ke apa ke, kita boleh dengar lagi compared to male. Okay, so this is the one that have a high frequency will have a high pitch. The one with the low frequency, small frequency, will have a low pitch. Okay, so if you are an audiologist lah, this is very famous, very common for you. This diagram is known as the banana diagram because it have a banana in the middle, and this is called as the audiogram. Okay, if you take a look at this, we have the intensity of the sounds in a unit of decibel. Okay, and then we have a frequency of the sound in a unit of hertz. So when we are talking, our ear are actually hearing 20 to 60 decibel. So within 20 to 60 decibel, our ear is actually pleased to that sound. But if the intensity is more than 70 and onwards, our hearing will be macam bising lah. Okay, so macam yang kita dengar sekarang ni, ni mungkin dalam truck bunyi. So 100 decibel yang dekat belakang saya ni. So it's 100 decibel. Same. Okay. Buat banglo tu dah lama dah ni. Okay, so okay, looking at this, within this banana, the yellow color is the one that we can hear with the play sound. Contohnya kalau orang tu vacuum, so it's actually vacuuming is having the high frequency within 3000 Hertz. Okay, that's why you are not pleased during vacuuming, because I don't know. Okay. Alright, now let's take a look at the sounds wave. We have the compressions and reflection. Instead of just having the frequency pitch, we also have the wavelength, or known as the amplitude. Yes, I'm having class. Quiet. Okay, now let's take a look at the wavelength. So what is wavelength actually? Wavelength is actually the distance between one peak of the wave to another peak of wave. So means that the higher the wavelength, the higher the frequency lah. Alright. So this is the amplitude, the quarter. So high in amplitude is louder and also high in pitch. Okay. So loudness, or we call as the intensity of the sounds, is in the unit of decibel. Nanti kalau saya tanya soalan dalam MCQ, the sound intensity is measured in the unit of hertz. True or false? True. Okay, so the answer is false. So sound intensity or loudness is measured in the unit of decibels. Okay, so how did they measure? They have a log 10 come with intensity of the sounds, also intensity of the standing sound. Okay, so this one I done mentioning to you just now. Okay, this is masking. Macam sekarang ni saya tengah bercakap, tiba-tiba ada sound, background noise kat belakang saya. But you are still listening to my sound comparing to the background noise, because this is the mechanism of masking, by which the threshold of your hearing will be lowered to one sound and will be increased to another sound. So that is the masking. Contohlah bagus juga dia bising, so kita ada satu contoh. Alright, so now let's take a look at the transmissions of the sound wave in the middle ear. I did mention to you frequently just now, when we have vibrations from the tympanic membrane transferred to the ossicular muscles, thoracicular bone, and then the foot plates of Steppis will knocking the oval window. It's actually moving like a piston. Piston bukan pistol piston yang dalam kereta tu, dalam motor tu, tahu kan? So the one will knock in and out frequently. So the movement of the foot plates of Steppis frequently will produce the waving structures of the fluid of the perilimb in the vestibular scala vestibuli. Right? So this perilimb will move, and remember on top of this basilar membrane we have the organ of Cochlea that have the basilar membrane down below, and also tectorial membrane on top, the inner cell in between, burger the inner cell, and then the tectorial membrane and basilar membrane will knock the hair cells. So when it knock on the hair cells, the stereocilia will bend. So when the stereocilia bend, it open the potassium channel. So potassium channel masuk, action potentials, send the impulse, send the neurotransmitter, then there is the sounds wave coming in, and the brain will interpret, oh, this is the Dr. Azlina voice, she's talking about hearing, okay, like that. Alright, so now let's take a look at the mode of sound transmission. So sound transmission, let's start with the outer one lah, because it's coming from the air. So we have the air conductions. Okay, it's transmitted through the air of the middle ear cavity and vibrate the secondary tympanic membrane, the round window. Okay, and then they reach the perilimb, and then we also have a bone conduction. Alright, it's transmitted through the ossicular bone. This is ossicular conduction. Terbalik. Ossicular conduction through ossicular bone, and the bone conduction is actually through our skull. You ada temporal bone kan? Skull kan? So skull actually, Aiden, can you please watch TV upstairs? Can you? Sekejap let's go tengok TV kat atas, nanti ada lagi another masking sound. Okay, and another one we have the bone conduction. So bone conduction is actually your skull itself can also produce the sound. Contohnya saya ketuk kepala awak, ataupun saya ambil kuali saya bang kepala awak, akan rasa berdengung. But still the system, the what we call the skull can transmit the tympanic membrane and also the bone can still detect it as the vibration. That's why kalau awak tengok dulu-dulu orang yang pakai alat pendengaran, okay, dia letak dekat cuping telinga dia je. So that one will produce a vibration. Itu special lah. Tak payah masuk ke dalam telinga, kita letak dekat skull pun dia boleh dengar lagi. Alright. So this is what I shown you. Piston tadi, okay, dia boleh gerak ni piston. Tengok ingat piston pula. Okay, so it move in and out. Alright. So I did mention to you this one. Okay. Saya dah ceritakan macam mana dia jadi. Ini untuk awak baca kemudian je. Sebab saya takut awak tak faham lepas saya cerita. Alright. So let's take a look at the transductions of the sound wave. So during resting membrane potentials, the inner hair cells having negative 60 millivolts and the endocochlear potential is positive 80 millivolt. Okay. Apa tu? So the membrane potential lah. Membrane potential different. Awak belajar action potential resting, we have negative negative 90 for example. So in the inner hair cells, the resting membrane potential is negative 60 and the another layer is positive 80 millivolt. So the potential difference is 140 millivolt. Bila awak tambah, awak tolak lah, positive 80 minus 60, so you will get 140 millivolt different. Maksudnya the charge difference is 140. So that charge, that the large difference in the membrane potential is actually helping the influx of the potassium. Okay, so I did mention to you just now the shorter hair cells, when the tectorial membrane on top of it and also the basilar membrane push burger these inner hair cells, so the stereocilia in the inner hair cell will bend towards the tallest hair cell, to the tallest stereocilia. So when it bends to the tallest stereocilia, so the potassium channel will be open because the influx together, the calcium and also the potassium, by which the calcium over here will also enter to help the movement of the vesicles, right, to release the neurotransmitter. During this time, we call the depolarization. So this is a depolarization. You can read this. The process is just similar to the action potentials, but the difference is that the stimulus, how the stimulus has been transferred from the sound wave into the action potentials. Okay, tectorial membrane tadi. Remember. Okay, what about the repolarization? Every depolarizations must follow with repolarization. So the one during depolarizations, the shortest stereocilia will bend towards the tallest stereocilia. During repolarizations, the tallest stereocilia will move to the opposite way. Okay, so ni depolarization. This is hyperpolarizations. Okay, role of cochlea. Again, the basilar membrane, they have a hair cells, they have a tectorial membrane, and they will integrate all of these informations and will send information as the sound wave. They send the information as the pattern of phase. But instead of that, have you ever asked why cochlea must be long in structure? Maksudnya kalau awak open it, spread it open, the cochlea is actually like a sheath. Okay, dia macam piano. Okay, dia macam piano tapi awak gulung-gulungkan dia, awak rollkan dia macam kapet. So it's actually a sheath. Why they must be long in shape and then they have a scattered inner hair cells on top of it? Because God has make it similar to the piano. So apa yang ada dekat dalam environment kita ni, itulah sebenarnya sistem yang ada dalam our body system. So cochlea is actually to encode the frequency and the amplitude of the sound wave. So how do they encode? Dia macam ni. Dia macam ni. Okay, at the basilar, ini semua berulang-ulang saja, nanti awak boleh baca. Okay, at the basilar membrane, if you can take a look, okay, this is the cochlea, the base one. Alright, this is the full place of Steppis. If you take a look at the inside, you will see that kalau cochlea, awak tengok dekat base ni besar kan, bila dia pergi dekat apex jadi makin nipis kan, makin kecil. But it's opposite to the basilar membrane. Basilar membrane at the base over here, it's only narrowed, but it is wider at the apex. The arrangement is opposite. So why do they arrange the inner hair cells in this pattern? That because it going to serve as the place to encode the tone. Sama macam piano lah, awak ada keyboard, bila awak ada piano, key dia tu, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, key dia tu, every key encode either that is the high frequency sound or low frequency sound. Coming from the left to the right, all of that tone is actually different. Similar to the basilar membrane, inner hair cell on top of the basilar membrane, each place ni, semua inner hair cell ni, on top of it is actually encoded for different tone. When I say A is encoded with a low frequency. When I say high frequency alphabet yang high frequency, E is high frequency, so I is encoded at the apex, almost at the end. So meaning that it's actually providing the one organization, and this organization we call it as the Tonotopic Organization. Tone organization. So it's very special. Kalau saya cakap xylophone, awak tak faham lah, ini xylophone. Okay, actually it's look like a xylophone, it's look like a piano. So every key have a different encode for different tones. Very special. Sangat bagus. But at the base over here, the narrow region over here is actually encode for the high frequency sound. Bila nyaring sangat, like actually vacuuming, so vacuuming will be detected at the base. Like kalau low frequency sound, like napping or tapping on the table, so it's actually the low frequency sound, it will be encoded at the apex. Alright, so instead of just this system, this organization, we call it Tonotopic Organization. But the coding, we call it as the place coding or place theory of auditory system. So kalau saya tanya, how does our system differentiate from the high frequency sound to the low frequency sound? So you might say the difference is being encoded by the basilar membrane with the tonotopic organizations, and this coding known as the place coding or place theory of auditory system. The arrangement of the inner hair cell on top of the basilar membrane from the apex base to the apex give the tone, give the difference in the sound frequency, encode the difference of the sounds frequency. Macam itulah cara jawab dia. Okay, contoh tadi. Okay, kalau awak tengok kat sini, high frequency at the base. Ni kalau kita buka lah cochlea tu, when we expand the cochlea, spread open it, you will see high frequency at the base, low frequency at the apex. Okay, so sound frequency discrimination. Kita start lambat tadi kan, so kita habis lambat sikit. So sound frequency discriminations, you have a place and also travelling wave. So place is where do you place the sound. Contohnya on a right ear or on a left ear. Travelling wave means that the distance that the wave is travelling. If let's say the sound source is coming from your right ear, contohlah saya petik tangan saya kat sebelah kanan telinga awak, okay, I click my finger at your right ear, alright, okay, without telling you where am I actually, you can say that is coming from the right side. Why do you know? How do you know that it's coming from the right side? Is because when I click my finger on near to your right, the place is closer to your right comparing to your left. And also the travelling wave to your right ear comparing to the left ear is shorter. So your right ear can perceive that is coming from the right sides of your ear. Okay. Fahamkan maksud saya macam mana awak bezakan bunyi tu datang kanan dan kiri? Actually when you click your finger, when I click your finger near to your right ear, your left ear can also listen. But your brain can see that is coming from your right side. Okay, so this is how the wave travel on top of the basilar membrane. Okay, low frequency sound is jauh sikit lah. High frequency sound dia banyak kan, wave dia banyak. So dia frequent kan, so it will go to the base. Macam mana awak bezakan? Alright. So done telling about this Tonotopic Organization, transducer, done telling about this also, this one also. Okay, so the cochlear potentials, you have a cochlear microphonic summation potentials and also nerve action potentials. So this is how they detect lah the sound wave that come into the cochlear potential. So this is going to detect the cochlear microphonic. Okay, this one okay lah. Alright, so let's take a look at the difference between cochlear microphonic and also action potentials. So cochlear microphonic cannot be masked, but action potential can completely be masked. Okay, nanti awak boleh baca lah ini. Localizations I did mention to you, time arrival and also the intensity of the sound. Okay, the placing theory and also the place theory and also time travelling, and also the role of pinna. Okay, role of pinna actually quite important. Okay, contoh kalau awak pergi berhutang dengan loan shark kan, dia pergi potong telinga awak. So awak pun hilang lah cuping telinga. So when you lost your pinna, okay, actually it's already reduced 15 decibels of the sound intensity that coming to your inner ear, because it will collect the sound wave. If let's say you lost your pinna, so you're unable to locate, you're unable to collect a lot of sound waves that coming in. Sebab tu tadi saya cakap, kalau macam contoh elephant, awak cakap elephant tu sensitif kan, awak tak boleh cakap apa-apa. Tak tahulah, kalau orang tua dulu cakap, jangan cakap buruk-buruk pasal elephant, dia boleh dengar. Yes, true, because they have the very very large pinna, so they can collect lots of sound waves that coming in to their ear. Similar to the cat also can turn, but human cannot, because human has been given the exclusive protective behavior, so dia dah tarik balik lah kelebihan boleh dengar kiri kanan tu. Okay, so this is a sound source, right? This is a time travel. How do you differentiate either the sound coming from the left or coming from the right? So the sounds coming from the left, when the sound source is near to the left side, and time travel is that the shorter the distance, so the brain can interpret that coming from that shorter. Okay, this is again the summary of how the sounds has been transferred, the event during the hearing mechanism. So you can read by yourself, it's just for your reference. Alright, this is the informations that coming to your brain. Okay, information ascend from the cochlear nucleus to the inferior colliculi of the midbrain. Again, this is just a repeat. And then to the inferior colliculi direct to the variety unconscious motor response to the sounds, and then ascend to the acoustic informations in the hypothalamus, okay, in the medial geniculate nucleus, and then to the Broadman layer 40 and 41 or 42, I don't remember, Broadman around 40 to 42. So it project the fibers and deliver the informations, and to a specific locations is our auditory complex inside our brain. So when we talk about the positive impact, when there is a problem to our hearing, to our normal system, our hearing can be disturbed. So it can cause a deafness. So thank to God, semua yang ada kat sini boleh mendengar dengan sempurna. Okay, so we are actually having 3 type of hearing loss. We call deafness lah. Hearing loss ni biasanya or sometimes we call it as deafness. We have a conductive deafness, we have a sensory deafness, and also you have mixed deafness. So mixed deafness maksudnya ada dua-dua. Ada conduction problem, ada sensory neural problem. When we talk about the conductive problem, meaning that your ear not able to conduct the sound wave. So what are the regions in your ear that conduct the sound wave? It's either your pinna, your outer ear, and also the middle ear, because it's actually the place. The outer ear and the middle ear is actually the place to conduct the sound wave. So that must come from that region. When we talk about the sensory neural deafness, it's actually talking about the nerve that conduct, that transduce the electricals, the mechanicals impulse into the electrical current, which is the inner hair cell. Kita ada problem. So sensory neuron is actually talking about the inner hair cells. The conductive is the channels that conduct or transmit the sound wave. Okay, contohnya blockade of the external auditory canal, thickening of the tympanic membrane. Why thickening of the tympanic membrane? For example, if let's say you have a tympanitis, okay, so remember that the tympanic membrane is actually made of the collagen and also the fibrous membrane. So when you have inflammations on top of your tympanic membrane, it can cause fibrosis and thickening of the gegendang. So the thickening of the tympanic membrane make it not too elastic as the normal. So thickening of the nerve jadi problem lah. Sebab tu masa awak korek-korek telinga tu, jangan pula awak pergi korek menggunakan benda yang tajam, because it can cause damage to your tympanic membrane. And then acute or chronic otitis media, so meaning that the problem with the bone, the ossicular bone, immobilizations of the ossicles due to the otosclerosis. Okay, maksudnya ossicular bone tu tak boleh nak vibrate. Dia ankle dia tu dah longgar ke cramp ke kan, so tak boleh nak vibrate, tak boleh conduct the sounds. And then distractions of the auditory ossicles or eustachian tube obstruction. So eustachian tube tu terganggu lah. Alright, the sensory neuron, it could be to the toxic degenerations of the hair cells due to the antibiotic, for example, streptomycin and gentamicin. So this is toxic to the inner hair cells. Alright, it will block the mechanosensitive channels, and also senile degenerations of the hair cells. Contohnya orang tu dah aging. So when they become aging, their hair cells will become inactive. Okay. Sebab tu kalau orang tua-tua ada yang selalu dengar, dia kurang dengar lah apalah kan, mostly due to the sensory neuron. Damage to the outer hair cells. Okay, damage to the outer hair cell is actually can be caused by the prolonged exposure to the loud noise. Contohnya awak dengar awak study, rumah awak bising, lepas tu awak pakai earphone, lepas tu awak kuat-kuat gila sampai adik awak dekat bilik sebelah pun boleh dengar yang dekat earphone tu. So it's actually very dangerous because it can cause fatigue to your stapedius muscles and also to your tensor tympani muscles. So it can cause fatigue at your inner ear. So tak bagus dengar kuat-kuat sangat. Even though you know that our ear is actually having the acoustic reflex or tympanic reflex, itu kita panggil reflex, dia control intensity of the loudness, but beware, prolonged exposure to the noise can cause deafness, sensory neural deafness. Bahaya. Okay, that's why if you take a look at the persons who work at the lampangan terbang, who work at the airport as the guide for the airplane that landing tu, okay, dia pakai orang panggil apa? Hearing aid lah. Dia pakai tu apa? Headphone headgear. So that one is to protect their ear from the high pitch airplane engine noise. Okay, another one is due to the tumors, trauma, labyrinthis, okay, problem with the labyrinth, and also the Meniere's disease. So mixed due to the trauma, infection, tumors, and genetic mutation. Okay, so this is the aging process that can cause a hearing loss lah. Dia baca ankylosis of the ossicles, cause decrease in the sound transmissions to the inner ear, atropic changes, decrease in the hearing loss together, jadilah progressive hearing loss. All together with the deteriorations or senile hair cell just now, which I talked to you that when you go aging, you might have sensory neural loss with decrease in speech discrimination. Dia tak boleh nak dengar lah, dia tak boleh nak detect inner hair cells on top of the basilar membrane tu tak sensitive. So the place coding theory is not sensitive, cannot detect which sounds belongs to high pitch or low pitch sound. So progressive hearing loss. Okay, so this is the hearing test which we can use to test whether that person is undergo hearing loss or not. Right now, if you can listen to me clearly, you don't have to go and do the tuning fork test because the outcome you don't have a problem. If let's say when we talk to a person, that person is hearing to my speech, but you cannot, then you can go and do a tuning fork test, or else you cannot tell whether you have a problem or not. A normal person, you know that you are normal. Okay, so tuning fork test, we have a Rene test, Weber test, and also audiometry test. I don't think I can explain this today. Maybe we can explain during practical classes later. Okay, tak apalah, nanti I explain during practical class about how does they implement the Rene, Weber, and how does this test has been carried out. It's very important practical. Kalau practical nanti dia akan keluar dekat dalam mana? Kat dalam OSPI kan. So walaupun online practical class, please come and listen carefully. Who know one of the questions that come out kan as your OSPI question later on. Okay, so this is a Weber test. Okay, this is a Rene test. I will talk to you what is the functions of these two tests in practical class nanti minggu depan. Okay, so this is the audiometry test, electronic, we call it as the pure tone audiometry. So bila dia tekan-tekan punat ni, dia akan dengar satu sound, satu tone dia. Macam tu, high frequency ke apa pun. Right. dia ada juga speech audiometry. One of my friend is audiologist. Hari tu I visit dekat tempat dia, dia jual alat-alat bantu pendengaran lah. Seronok juga tengok dia buat test dekat patient yang datang. Okay, so nama dia speech audiometry test adalah saya cakap, awak kena cakap balik apa yang saya cakap. Okay, that is speech audiometry test. Pernah kan awak tengok orang tu pakai earphone, buka lagu kuat-kuat, main game kan, and then dia teka, dia cakap something and then you can teka balik apa dia kata, cakap kan. So that is one of the speech audiometry example. Okay, loudness discomfort test adalah kita bagi you earphone, kita buka kuat-kuat and then tengok you sensitif macam mana. Kalau you sensitif sangat, you might have prebuccusis ke contohnya. Okay, so that's all for today. So the quote for today, the quieter you become, the more you can hear. Okay, so before we end the class, I would like you to open your chat box. Okay, in your chat box, I want you to fill in the Google form. This is my Google form specifically. I want you to fill in. I want to make sure that you come to my class. I'll give you only 5 minutes to fill in. Siapa yang fill in selepas 5 minit ke, I will not count that as an attendance. Okay, that's for my own reference. I think that's the end for today. We don't have enough time because we'll have class at 10 o'clock, right? So if you have any questions, you can ask right now. Tanya awak ada kelas practical micro 10. Okay, any question? Jiwan, ada question tak? Tak dengar suara pun, tidur ke apa pun saya tak tahu. So before that, Jiwan?
Tak ada, doktor.
Tak ada? Faham tak?
Faham, doktor.
Saya nak tanya awak kalau awak faham.
Briefly, doktor. Kena study balik untuk extra understanding.
Apa? Tonotopic Organization tu apa? Tonotopic Organization.
I don't quite really remember.
Sudah. Okay, Auni Syakira. What is Tonotopic Organization?
I'm not sure tu, doktor.
Penat saya cakap dengan not sure pula dah.
Yang different frequencies tu ke, doktor?
Betul. Maksudnya dia ada organisasi disusun inner hair cell tu dekat basilar membrane satu layer and then bentuk
macam piano tu.
Yes, correct. Okay. Tengok siapa ni yang jawab saya ni? Amira listen. Jivan esok saya tanya awak balik Okay, tomorrow for my class on vestibular and equilibrium, we will going to start at 8:30. For those yang coming late, I will close the meeting. You will not able to come. Okay? So please be punctual. And tomorrow, I will ask the questions about today's lecture. Nasib lah korang. Siapa tak boleh jawab, potong markah. Okay? So that's all for today. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, doctor.
Welcome.
Thank you, doctor.
Welcome.
Thank you,
Thank you,
doktor.
doctor.
Okay, bye.
Doctor.